Busy they are because as movie fans are sheltering more than ever, they're looking for fresh choices, and a lot are discovering Victoria's proud little secret, Pick-a-Flick video rental, like no other video store you've ever seen, I guarantee you that. So drop in and see it for yourself. Pick-a-Flick, Stadacona Center, the top of Pandora at Fort. All right, now back to that magic movie moment. Let's check in with Michael and Susan. Or is it Susan and Michael this time around?
Who wants to go first?
I don't know. You go first.
Okay. Yeah. All right, guys, my magic movie moment comes from the 2006 movie starring Will Smith and his adorable 5-year-old son, Jaden, Pursuit of Happiness. It's a quiet little movie, and it's a true story of Chris Gardner, a man who is down and out, and he's got a child to care for. But some bad luck, a few stupid moves, and a shrew for a wife, Linda, played by Thandie Newton. He loses his apartment with his 5-year-old, and he joins the ranks of the homeless, if not hopeless. So he's evicted, and he becomes the mainstream homeless person. He's bounced from shelter to shelter, but he holds firm to his dignity, his resolve, his faith, his love, and his independence. And he's a pretty optimistic guy. It sweeps through the film like a searchlight. It's just absolutely, he's the perfect guy to play this role. In the early 80s, Ronald Reagan is delivering the bad economic news on television. And Chris, played by Will Smith, is about to prove you don't need an army to fight war on poverty. Just big smiles, smarts, and some really sturdy shoes. He knocked on a lot of doors. There's a few memorable scenes in this movie, like when he had to spend the night in a dirty subway bathroom with the fluorescent lights on, with his small 5-year-old, and people are pounding on the door all night. And there's another scene where he gets a job finally, but it's not a real job. It's an internship at a stockbroker agency. So it's unpaid. And there's a scene where his very rich boss is on the street corner and he says, "I left my wallet upstairs. Can you give me $5 for a cab?" And it turns out to be Will Smith's last $5. It's absolutely heartbreaking. My magic movie moment, however, is actually really uplifting. He thinks it's his last day as an intern, and he's had no one say anything to him about a job, and he figured that was it. He was going to go back and pound the pavement and try and make some money somewhere. He's called into the boss's office, and they give him a full-time position at the company. He's trying to suppress the tears, and then we see him spill out onto a crowded San Francisco street as a man possessed with sheer joy. The relief and gratitude in his heart and his expression on his face, the way he carries himself, he's in a sea of people going about their business, but he knows that his life has changed forever. It's a really beautiful scene. I watched it again last night. And again, you've got this sea of people on the street, and there's this one guy who towers above everybody else, and he can barely contain himself with the joy that is within.
Yeah,
that
good
was
movie.
Wonderful,
yeah.
Wonderful
and
movie.
His son, is it Jaden Smith, his son, who's gone on to bigger and better things as well?
And this kid, obviously you think nepotism when it comes to movies, but he was a talented little guy, and he just played this role marvelously.
How about the Rubik's Cube scene where he's trying to impress the VIP guy in the car, thinking that this is going to be his elevator pitch and keep him there until he hires him again, right?
Yeah.
And the guy's not even.
It turns out another string of disappointments.
Yeah, it's just guy's not impressed at all. That's terrible.
I wonder what it was like having father and son working together. You'd have all your father's skill. Don't do that. No, wait a second.
Well, I don't know. He certainly was a good influence on him because the guy's both of them gone on to some marvelous careers. Okay, Susan, what have you got now for your magic movie moment?
All righty. Gentlemen, I have 1972's The Godfather. I'm going to be greedy, gentlemen, this time because I have two magic moments. So first of all, Michael Corleone, played by Al Pacino, is noting words of wisdom from his father, Don Vito, Marlon Brando. Keep your friends close, but your enemies closer. But I'm going to focus on my very special magic moment. And that's when Don Corleone, amidst unthinkable killings, plays in his orange grove with his little grandson. He's a gruff old man. And he's teaching his little grandson how to spray the oranges, probably DDT. But then he cuts an orange in sections. He turns his back to the youngster as he puts the orange rind in his mouth. The lips are closed around it. He turns around quickly and starts chasing the little boy. He's chasing him all around the grove with these guttural growls, "Arr, arr." The boy is like crying and screaming, and then he does start laughing. Poor little thing. And then Vito grabs his chest and crumples to the ground. He's had a heart attack. The boy stares at him for a while, and then he runs in to get his mommy. It's still very endearing for me to see the dichotomy of a brutal killer and a very loving grandfather.
Coppola really, I think, recognized that scene as one of the more significant scenes to show you there was some humanity from Don Corleone as well.
Coming up next, an offer you can't refuse on Boomertown. Hi, happy Labor Day, September 6th, 1965. It all began with a small ad in New York's Daily Variety that attracted 437 young men interested in forming the world's first manufactured boy band, the Monkees. Here's Barry.
Back in 1965, Bob Rafelson was working at Screen Gems, the TV division of Columbia Pictures, with another young producer, Bert Schneider. Both were fans of the Beatles' film A Hard Day's Night, and they marveled at how it had fused comedy and rock music. And they wondered, could that be translated to TV? Bob Rafelson.
The Beatles were emerging first out of Germany and then out of Liverpool, and then finally making their way towards America with hit songs. And one of the movies, A Hard Day's Night, had appeared. So the notion of a crazy, frolicsome four had been legitimatized by the appearance of the Beatles.
As these two guys began developing their series, they wanted to hire an established band, such as Herman's Hermits, but they decided they didn't want to deal with record company contracts. But through the magic of TV, the band didn't even need to be musicians. They wouldn't really be playing the instruments. They only had to look convincing. Acting experience wouldn't be necessary either. So they ran an ad in Hollywood Reporter and Variety.
And then a line formed. And it was about, 600 guys outside of Columbia Pictures. And I can recall sitting with people, many of whom the professionals wanted to change their name and be the Monkees.
Mickey Dolenz, a former child star, was hired to be the drummer.
I'd never played the drums, a professional musician, but I'd, been around and I'd been in groups and I played rhythm guitar in a group. And again, they said, "You're the drummer." And I was being cast as the drummer, and I said, "Fine."
Davy Jones was an experienced stage performer who had toured with the musical Oliver back in 1962.
I was born in Manchester, England. Screen Gems got hold of me, and they were doing like Wacky Ship in the Army, Hogan's Heroes. And then the monkey thing started to develop, and I was just perfect for that, That was sort of like rock and roll, so they finally found a vehicle.
Stephen Stills of the band Buffalo Springfield was cast, but he backed out when he learned the Screen Gems would own the rights to any songs he wrote. So he suggested an ex-bandmate named Peter Tork.
And I walked in on the auditions. I sat down and waited for everybody else. One kid did get special treatment. Davy Jones walked through like he owned the place.
Mike Nesmith, already a successful songwriter, auditioned for the show wearing his trademark wool cap and carrying a sack of laundry.
They started calling me Wool Hat, and when they were going through all the screen tests that they had, they started calling me the guy with the wool hat. I said, "Yeah, well, bring Wool Hat back. Let's see Wool Hat again." Oh, I didn't care. it seemed silly, but I didn't care.
Rafelson and Schneider had their four musicians, but they were lacking one important detail, a name for the band. Some possibilities tossed around: the Creeps, the Turtles, and the Inevitables. Then Schneider suggested taking a cue from how the Beatles had misspelled Beatles, and he turned Monkees into Monkees. And by the time they filmed that pilot in the spring, the Monkees' personas were in place.
I fancied myself as a movie director, and I got sidetracked making a series. But if ever there was a series that I could have enjoyed making, this was it. We did do the pilot, and apparently this was the lowest rated show ever screened. I said, I'll tell you what, give me 24 hours to recut the pilot. And the next day, it tested as the highest rated show and went from zip to this freak, we want it, we'll sign it for 2 years, you're on.
Here we come, walking down the street. We get the funniest looks from everyone we meet. Hey, hey, we're the Monkees, and people say we monkey around. But we're too busy singing to put anybody down. We're just trying to be friendly. Come and watch, sing and play. We're the young generation, and we've got something to say.
The Monkees became overnight sensations. The best-selling rock band in the United States wasn't the Beatles, it was the Monkees. And they weren't even a real band, at least at first. They were a Hollywood creation.
You had 4 actors, basically, that nobody had seen or heard of.
But they'd soon suffer the scorn of the music industry.
Obviously, we didn't know enough about A, pop music, B, record making, to be able to crank out 2 tunes a week for, of television quality every week, as well as make a TV show.
Screen Gem's head of music, Don Kirshner, was hired to develop the band's sound into something catchy and marketable. Kirshner tapped songwriters of the day, including Neil Diamond and Carole King, who contributed to the band's hits, such as Last Train to Clarksville. And on September 24th, 1966, the made-for-television Monkees knocked down the fourth wall decisively when Clarksville entered the Billboard Top 40.
Take the last train to Clarksville and I'll meet you at the station. You can be here by 4:30 'cause I've made your reservation. Don't be slow. No, no, no. No, no, no.
Mickey Dolenz and I were sitting outside our house in Beverly Glen, and all of a sudden, Last Train to Clarksville came on. We just went, yeah, almost jumped to the roof, and it wasn't even a convertible. So we went, wow, it's incredible. Oh, God, this is it. We're hugging each other,
Sweet young thing.
As the first season came to a close, word had leaked out that the Monkees were a fabricated band, but their popularity had already skyrocketed. So NBC sent them on a concert tour.
We play this one little song, and it's gonna go out, and 5 million people are gonna buy this thing, and another 40 million people are gonna hear it. It's not necessarily sobering, but it does tend to make you giddy. It tends to make you, this is pretty fun.
And that's the amazing story, I think, behind the Monkees. What started out as this television show about a group, all of a sudden, life imitating art, imitating life, the fantasy became the reality.
The Monkees were everywhere, performing their hits, which they hadn't even played in the first place.
And for the last 30 years, people have said to me, is it true you didn't play your own music? Nobody played their own music. The Mamas and the Papas didn't play their own music. They had people playing it.
Well, the truth is, here is the truth. The reason that all that furor kicked up was because Michael blew the whistle on us. Michael said, we are fake. Call us fake because by God we are. Michael did that.
TV's first manufactured band was about to become a real band, and the task was daunting.
All those Beatle comparisons all the time, it never made sense to me. The Monkees to the Beatles is like Star Trek to NASA. Both of them are very valid in their context, but very different.
As the second season dragged on, the Monkees spent most of their waking hours working and grew increasingly tired and jaded. Finally,